Good morning. It's Friday, February 28th, last day of February. We're last day before we take a little break. I think everybody's excited about that. We are going to spend some time today going over our miscellaneous agriculture bill. Michael O'Grady walk us through the bill. We have some folks from the agency in today, and so we're looking forward to that, and we're actually going to pivot after that onto our Bill S60, which we hope to vote out today. So I think that we might be able to do that. So starting out this morning, we have our counsel, Michael O'Grady. Welcome.
Good morning.
Good morning, Michael.
How would you like me to proceed?
Well, how about the agency? I should have asked that before we started. Did the agency have any comments they want to make or anything before we just walk through the bill or anything like that? Laura, Steve, anything?
I think we're happy to wait. But
Okay.
We're here to answer questions. That's you.
Okay, there we go.
And I can provide some clarifications from testimony on Monday too.
Okay, sounds great. So I think, Michael, if we just want to go through the bill and,
Sure.
I think you're probably aware of what it is. So, tell us what we need to know.
So again, the context is that currently the state maintains two water quality programs. One at ANR, which is the delegated federal entity for issuing what are called NFTs permits. One NFTs permit is a permit for concentrated animal feeding operations, whereas there's an agricultural water quality program at the Agency of Agriculture, which regulates non-point source runoff from farms under an LFO, MFO, and required agricultural practices program, small farms certification program as well. That dichotomy was set up because in 2004, 2005, there was an EPA rule which dictated that states that were delegated, NFTs states, had to adopt programs for permitting concentrated animal feeding operations. But there is a preamble to that rule that said the EPA encourages states to work through state programs, including at agencies of agriculture, to establish programs where farms don't need permits. You don't need a permit if you're a farm and you don't have a discharge. And that's what the Agency of Agriculture program does. It sets up a regulatory program, prohibits farms from having discharges, and therefore keeps farms out of the federal CAFO permit process. Well, EPA has said that ANR isn't adequately implementing the Federal Clean Water Act NFTs CAFO permit. There was a petition by CLF to EPA to say that ANR was not adequately inspecting, enforcing, and permitting discharges on farms. And EPA has ordered ANR to take a corrective action or propose a corrective action. Part of that corrective action is clarifying the authority of the Agency of Agriculture with their continuing agricultural water quality program. Because what the agencies, both agencies, the administration, maybe might be a better term, is proposing is to keep the two programs, but to strengthen ANR's program so it meets EPA's concerns, while also continuing the program at the Agency of Agriculture because it serves farmers. Many farmers are more comfortable with the Agency of Agriculture than they are with the Agency of Natural Resources. And there's tied into the Ag Water Quality Program at the agency's Ag Water Quality Financing. And the engineers at the agency that help farmers do the projects that get federal financing and state financing. So this program or this bill would make tweaks to the Agency of Agricultural water quality program for purposes of clarifying that dichotomy, that division between A&R's CAPO, NIFTY's permit program, and the Agency of Agriculture's agricultural water quality program. So section 1 of the bill is in Title VI. It's in the agricultural water quality chapter, which is 215. And this is the section that effectively kind of establishes the authority for the agency for the ag water quality program. And one of the subsections in that section directs the two agencies, the Agency of Ag and the Agency of Natural Resources, to cooperate with each other. And to do so currently for concentrated animal feeding operations through a memorandum of understanding of how the two agencies will respond to alleged violations, complaints, etc. So that MOU is being struck because one of the things that EPA has said about A&R's CAPO program is that A&R has to clearly be the lead enforcer. That A&R needs to be the one that is appointed for any inspection. So what this language is doing, going from page 1 to page 2, is that directing that the agencies continue to cooperate as A&R implements the federal CAFO, and that the Secretary of Agriculture implements the state ag water quality program for non-point source discharges on farms. And then on page 2, you'll see there's language from 6 through 17 that strikes the reference to the MOU, how the two agencies will develop it, what their relationship was going to be, because there's not going to be an MOU anymore. A&R is going to be the point, but the agencies are going to continue to cooperate. And in addition, they're going to consult with each other, page 2, line 18 through 21. That they shall issue a document that sets forth their respective roles, implementing Clean Water Act for CAPOs, and in the Agency of Ag's implementation of non-point source programs on farms. Then you'll see some conforming amendments replacing MOU with document on page 3, line 3, and then page 3, lines 5 through 7. And that really is the changes here in 40. And there's on page 4, they're striking some antiquated dates that had directed the agencies to come up with performance measures in their MOU for gauging success. The agencies have been doing that. They continue to issue a report to you about those performance measures. And that really is 4810. Then you get to 4810A, which is in section 2. This is that section that directed what was the substance of the required agricultural practices. And one of the changes is on page 5, line 3 through 6. This is where Laura might be able to provide you some clarification to my testimony on Monday.
Okay.
So
You want to wait till then, Laura? Do you want
I guess one thing I'll just say is the conversation,
to tell us who you are?
sorry, Laura DePietro, Agency of Ag, Director of Water Quality Division. The conversation, and I apologize, I don't know what day it was, but went into structures and bunks and things like that. And the buffers are only to cropland.
Right.
So it doesn't apply if there's any infrastructure that is in place that is not the stuff that needs to be buffered. It is between corn, hay, soybean, and a ditch or a stream. And so that's the conversation. So nobody should have to move any infrastructure at all. And it's just a matter of whether and what buffer size ends up coming forth. The federal standard has 3 different options for how buffers are applied in the rule. And then in our rules, we have 25 feet on surface water and 10 feet on ditches. So there are differences for how they interact, which is why saying our state rules apply to state rules and not the federal rules. So therefore the federal rules can govern as they need.
We're good with that? Makes sense?
on page 5, line 10,
Oh, sorry.
Clark, I'm sorry. Line 5 on page 5 says active CAFO permit. From my understanding, there isn't anybody yet that has a active capable permit, is that correct?
That is correct, but I think this contemplates EPA's requirement that A&R go out and inspect farms and require those farms where they identify a discharge to get a CAPO permit.
Thank you.
Page 5 on 10, section 3, this is the permit requirements for large farm operation. You'll see page 6, there's that tweak replacing reference to the MOU and inserting the directive for the agencies to work cooperatively to respond to potential discharges under their distinct authorities and responsibilities that's set forth on the document you directed them to issue. Again, ANR's got to lead those Clean Water Act CAPO responses. On page 7, there are some changes here to first the Noah's Ark list of what is the large farm. When this was initially enacted, there wasn't that reference in the federal law to the liquid manure handling system. So that's replacing the reference to the domestic fowl or the barn or adjacent farms owned by the same person. Or actually, that's really just a clarification about the 30,000 ducks. And then the next sentence is language that's in the Clean Water Act now that wasn't then, about 2 or more individual farms that have common ownership and that join each other are going to be considered one farm for purposes of reviewing their threshold. Should I move on?
Yep.
Page
Your question about the list of animals, how long's that been? And
that's straight out of the CAPO rule from 2005.
yeah,
And they have 3 different lists. There's the small farm list, the medium farm list, and it's all about the numbers for each category.
yeah,
And then the agency has its own Noah's Ark list and the RAPs about how many chickens is farming, how many horses are farming, how many cows are farming.
So not actually out of the Old Testament.
I think they all of the numbers have more than 2 animals. On page 9, lines 3 through 10, this is still in the LFO permanent program. And during any calendar year in which a person has a large CAPO permit from A&R, they are not going to be required to pay the large farm operation fee to the agency of ag. That fee currently is $2,500 a year. So if they're paying a fee to A&R for that CAPO permit, they don't need to pay a fee to the agency of ag for a LFO permit. On page 9, line 11, section 4, there's the medium farm operation permits. The changes here are kind of further into the section on page 12. These are, I would say, conforming amendments to address the EPA's concerns. Again, replacing the MOU with that directive to cooperatively work together and to implement or in accordance with the distinct federal Clean Water Act and state source program responsibilities. Again, just that conforming change, and then you can skip ahead further to page 14. Again, this is the conforming amendment about cooperatively working together, striking the reference to the MOU, responding in a way that's consistent with their responsibilities under each program. Page 14, line 20, section 5, this is a seasonal application of manure. This is referencing an authorized emergency exemption that would be different from the seasonal exception. And this is where you had some discussion about changing the dates or changing really effectively the standards for the prohibition. I'm sure the agency can weigh in on that with you. And then section 6 on page 16. This is regarding the small farm certifications, and then it's again that so page 17, lines 5 through 9. It's may require an owner or operator, but any newly eligible or identified small farm to submit a certification compliance with the RAPs, and may require any small farm to regularly verify ongoing compliance with the RAPs. So right now, there's a threshold for when you have to certify your annual compliance with the RAPs. And so this is basically saying if they identify a newly eligible farm, then they will have to submit, and then they have the authority to require a farm underneath that threshold to certify. Maybe there's issues or geographic concerns, and they can require that annual certification for farms that otherwise would not require. So that's the walkthrough of the bill.
Put in a nutshell, it's taken an agreement that you're gonna probably be almost equal partners in, and it's actually giving more weight to A&R. Where the Agency of Ag is kind of the boots on the ground until it gets a little bit more serious about that. And then the A&R, Agency of Ag is a good cop, and the A&R will come in and be a little bit tougher if it gets to be a little bit more serious than that.
I don't know if I want to characterize either as the good cop or the bad cop, but A&R will have to take a more proactive, they might have to have a more proactive program in permitting CAFOs that trigger the federal. And EPA said they need to be inspecting, they need to be reviewing nutrient management plans, they need to go on the farm and look for discharges. Now, under the current MOU, the agencies had this cooperative. When there was a complaint, they would go out together, and then there were, provisions in the MOU about how any enforcement would go forward from there. Regardless of your perspective on how well that worked, that's going to have to change a little bit. That will have to change. I still think an Agency of Ag employee going out for these inspections, but is A&R going to bring in an Agency of Ag employee for every complaint, especially when it's become an A&R permanent CAFO? I don't know. So there will be some dynamics logistics that will have to get worked out over the course of the year.
Did I see in this, 1 second, did I see in there that it was, that A&R could come anytime, but that they would go once a year at least?
Well, for currently, large farms have that annual inspection. So the agency that they're gonna, and I have to refresh my memory on the A&R proposal, but there's going to be they're starting off inspections with the large farms. And then I think there will be an continued annual inspection of the large farms, but I need to refresh my memory.
So the responsibilities and the document, who do the agency sits down together to discuss this? And then who ultimately says this is what the responsibility documents that we agree on together?
Well, I think the agencies will agree to that. The way that they've agreed to the you directed them, General Assembly directed them to come up with that MOU, but you didn't interject yourself into the process as whether or not it was sufficient enough, etc. They submit the MOU to you regularly. It's on the legislator website under the reports function.
So then this responsibility in the document will be on the website of what they've decided to do.
Yeah. And they will be giving you that document.
Yes.
So a couple of things, if I could, the lawsuit from CLF This is only a CAFO permit that we're talking about, correct?
Well, that's, first, it's a little bit of a nuance, but they didn't actually bring suit. They petitioned
Okay.
EPA. So the Clean Water Act has what's called a citizen suit authority in it. And it allows anyone, frankly, to bring a claim against anyone who's allegedly violating the Clean Water Act. But before the person who wants to bring the action can go forward with it, can go to court, they have to notify the regulatory agency and give the regulatory agency, I think it's 45 days to initiate diligent prosecution. So that part of the citizen suit doesn't really happen because most of the time the regulatory agency steps in and says, yeah, we'll take care of this. We'll diligently prosecute. Let's not litigate and let's take care of it. So you don't see that many of them. I did like an inventory of like the national citizen suits like about 10 years ago, and there were only like 100 a year across the country. But where you get the citizen suit authority that's probably most effective is anyone can sue the agency, EPA, for not doing what they are required to do under the Federal Clean Water Act. One of the things they're required to do is to ensure that delegated states are implementing the delegated programs appropriately. And one of the things that people can do before you go to actual litigation is you just tell EPA, you petition them, it's called a petition, and say, hey, we think you are not doing what you're supposed to do. And because you're not doing what you're supposed to do, you need to withdraw that entire CAFO authority, the entire NIPTES authority. Because when you withdraw permitting authority under the Clean Water Act, you can't just pick, oh, we're just going to take that program or that program. You have to take all of the programs. And that means all construction permits, all wastewater treatment permits, all industrial discharge, all municipal stormwater. And so you probably don't want that to happen. And EPA probably doesn't want that to happen, because that would mean they would have to come in and start permitting all of those things. They do that in Massachusetts and New Hampshire. And so, I mean, they have a model for doing it, but that means more money, more staff, or they're going to have to move people here, probably, etc. They don't want to do that. They'll rattle their sword.
Saber money.
They don't want to do that. So they're trying to find a resolution that satisfies them, satisfies you, satisfies the legislature. Because one of the things that EPA's letter said, and it's to me, it's total federal government perspective. They just like totally overlook the legislature and the state. Say, oh, agency, you need to enact all this legislation and all these rules. And I'm like, I mean, the agency doesn't enact legislation. The agency's rules are delegated from the General Assembly. It's like you definitely have a role in how to respond to EPA's letter. And this is what you're doing. You're playing that role based on the recommendations of the agency.
So we've used this chat, if you will, many times in this building this year to indicate there's been a change in administration at the federal level. And I don't know, and I don't think anybody knows, because it seems like every day there's something else that happens that might be a surprise. But there potentially is a change that could happen at the EPA. And I'm kind of looking at this as a ripple effect. The petition from CLF caused the EPA to say, hey, Vermont, here's what you need to do, kind of thing. So I'll just leave that. That's just a comment. It wasn't a question.
Who can predict
Yeah.
what any administration, whenever any administration comes in, there's a change in perspective, change in administration, change in enforcement. But remember, there's that citizen suit authority that any person can bring. So if there isn't sufficient action from the CLF perspective, they can litigate.
Yep.
And EPA's response is gonna likely, or lack of response or insufficient response might instigate that more than maybe another administration. I don't know.
And I think you gotta look at it all, because it's not, in my opinion, it's not being ridiculous as far as what the fix is. I think it's probably was needed. The thing is to make sure it doesn't get ridiculous about how hard to keep on pushing as far as to bring the EPA in and all of that. It looks like we can come with a resolution and it's all good and everybody can agree and everybody can work together. It's just a matter of whether it's gonna satisfy the people who are petitioning us to make all these changes.
Yeah, I do think that's the unanswered question, because, but remember, if you go forward with litigation and the remedy is to withdraw the entire state's delegation, that's going to be chaos for a little bit.
Yeah.
When that happens, and it's never happened. Like I think EPA tried it once in Wisconsin, and they told Wisconsin they were going to do it, and Wisconsin was like, whatever. And then EPA initiated the withdrawal, and then Wisconsin was like, oh, sorry about that. Sorry. And then it took 5 years for Wisconsin to get to a point where EPA was like, all right, we're not gonna bother with trying to withdraw your delegation. And I think that's kind of how the advocates play into that kind of dynamic is the unknown.
Yes.
So with the, I'll say compliance with the EPA requests, there still need to be changes in Title 10. So this bill itself, we won't complete it. Am I understanding that correctly?
I've seen the proposed language to Title 10. There definitely are some changes there that you will want to make as a legislature. I think the agencies will want to make. The definitions in Title 10 aren't truing up to the federal definitions, and that changes scope of application. And so you probably want to amend Title 10.
Okay. And my other question is regarding and this is just because I don't know, the small farm certification of compliance with RAPs, medium and large farms also do that, or is that different?
So they have permits.
Okay.
And there's a rule for each of them about what they have to comply with. The LFOs get an annual inspection. The MFOs it's 3 years.
I think it's 3.
Yeah, every 3 years inspection. And the rules are, they're pretty specific, and plus the RAPs apply to them as well. There isn't a provision in the LFO and the rules that the RAPs cover the RAPs still.
So this changes it so that there's not an actual requirement in statute that small farms certify every year. There's regularly per the agency.
You'll still have to, they will still have to certify, but the agency has the ability when there's a new farm that is in the threshold, that new farm has to certify. And then if there's a small farm that's below the current certification threshold, the agency can require that farm certified.
We good?
I'm not quite. I'm reading this as right now, small farms have to certify
Right.
annually.
Sure. Right. So beginning on page 16, beginning on July 1, 2017, a person who operates a small farm as designated by the secretary shall certify compliance with the RAPs. Right. So that's ongoing.
Yeah.
The secretary shall establish requirements in the manner of certification. Part of those requirements is the secretary set a threshold for when certain farms don't need to certify.
Yeah.
And then when there's any newly eligible or identified farm that needs to, they will certify.
Right, that's the change. I'm talking about what happens right now. Right now, it says shall require an owner operator of presumably a farm to submit an annual certification.
Right, but that's newly eligible or identified. So if a new farm comes into existence after July of 2017, they're gonna have potentially need to certify.
Potentially, they not have.
Yeah, I'm sorry, that's not clear to me.
It's
What do
annually,
you-
it's annually right now.
Right now.
And we don't want it to be annually.
Okay.
Just
Yeah.
administratively burdensome.
Gotcha. Okay. And will that fold into, I know we don't have it right now, but fold into the right to farm law?
No, no, sorry.
Because I know required agricultural practices are part of that, but I haven't looked at that closely yet.
It generally creates a list that we know who we need to inspect.
Yeah.
And what we're finding is we call the people to schedule to say, hey, we're coming, we're gonna be in here, we want to do an inspection. And they'll say we're out of business, right? And so it,
Okay.
and that challenge of we've had, this is
Yeah.
a group, we've lost a lot of
Yeah.
farms. So we figure out if they're out of business that way
Yeah.
often. And then, for new farms, they often come and reach out to the agency for programs and
Yeah.
trying to understand things. So if we do it at an occurrence that is not annual, I think it'll save us administrative time trying to chase down people because we're naturally getting them when we call for inspection. But right now, to hold someone accountable for not turning in a piece of paper because they're out of business and they now live in Florida is not a good use of our time.
No disagreement here. All right, thanks for the clarification.
Anything else? Okay, so we're just gonna see you when we get back. Is that the plan?
Certainly, happy to.
Okay. And then, we're gonna continue on with our, S60. Unless there's anything else that anybody'd like to go as far as this walkthrough on the miscellaneous bill.
Good,
Okay.
thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for coming. We'll see you in a week. And, appreciate you folks. And,
Next week's not meeting.
weekend. Well, I'm not, yes. Can't get the language right. I know I'm not gonna be here like. On Tuesday. So, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Enjoy your
Okay,
break.
so let's, go to, S60. We have a few markups,
I made copies of the.
and then we have some, just a few little changes. I think we'd like to talk to Michael about. And, so I call Mark, or I think you probably have the best coffee as far as Mark goes. So would you, kind of lead on this one?
Sure, be glad to. So Michael, we're suggesting that we make a couple of changes. The first one is on page 1. Line 18 and 19. To delete the words are not equitably distributed to small and medium scale farmers. And just make the whole provision read. Many existing state and federal programs that are designed to support farms are difficult to access, administratively burdensome, and currently do not meet the needs of Vermont farmers in a holistic way. In other words, delete the reference to just small and medium.
Okay. So that's on page 1, line 14 and 15 of the document. No, just keep going through starting for the.
That's okay. I can change my page.
No, it's okay. I can follow it.
Okay. And then the next one is on the review board. This would be on the new version, page 7. Luckily, it's right at the top. Line 1, 2, and 3. To strike that and insert in its stead representatives, and I can send you the language if you like. Representatives of 3 agricultural organizations which can demonstrate expertise in dealing with all sizes and types of farms in Vermont, whether through granting funds, offering technical assistance, or advocacy, and have a proven track record of working with farmers appointed by the Secretary of Agriculture, Food and Markets.
I wasn't able to.
That's okay. I can, in fact, I'll email it to you right now. Those were the only two that I had.
Well, we had some discussion. What was it, Senator Major? We had some discussions on a couple other points here.
Amy, can you enlighten us a little bit on what changes you suggested?
If it's okay with the chair, I'm happy to.
Is that,
For the record, Amy Schollenberger, Norfolk, Vermont. I had emailed the committee a suggested change. So in the original version of the bill, in the appropriation section, the future appropriation was based on a formula. I understand you're striking that. That's fine. We're not arguing with you, but we thought it might be helpful for you to know what the situation is. And so we suggested a sentence that would go into the section of the powers of the board where it says they're going to report back to you, just adding a sentence telling you what the total documented damages were over, I believe we said over the, I don't remember exactly how we wrote it, but you have it in your email. I can pull it up in a second. And so that it wouldn't be in the appropriation section, it would not obligate anyone to do anything. It would just be information for your committees as you're considering whatever is appropriated into the fund. You would know what the documented damage had been in the recent past. I believe Senator Plunkett might have it up on the screen.
Yeah, the specific language would be adding a number 2 under powers of the board.
Maybe we can send that to Michael. And just,
Could you read it just one more time, Rob? Please.
So, yeah, I hadn't finished reading. So where it would go would be under powers of the board.
Yeah.
And the language would be the board shall also report the total documented Vermont farm financial losses from eligible weather conditions averaged over the previous 3 calendar years. And I'll forward it to you.
So it would just be information.
Yeah.
There would be no obligation.
If not email you before. So
If you just put in MOG, it'll probably pop up.
you should have that. Thank you.
Thank you.
yep, welcome.
There is a change in the draft that Linda just gave you, and it took out that prospective report on appropriations, which Amy was just referencing, and replaced it with just a fiscal year 26 appropriation of 7.5
Yeah.
million.
So that's,
That is on page 8, page 9.
and I think it was Michael O'Grady who I learned this from, but it might not be. But, I'll just first say, do we have the changes in there that we had discussed yesterday? Everybody remember that those were what the changes were? I mean,
Yes.
I think we have everything that we want in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So if we would maybe just go just a quick right straight down through it again, just one more time to make sure on the bill, make sure we have it right. And then because once we're gonna ask Michael to make those changes, we're gonna vote it out. We don't want anything in there that we don't want in there. Michael, are you fine with that?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
So beginning on page 1 of the document that's dated February 26th with an 8-10 and timestamp, you have that findings 2023-24 Vermont experienced extreme flooding and other climate disasters that devastated farms and working lands. Many existing state and federal programs are designed to support farms are difficult to access administratively for some, and now we'll say, and currently do not meet the needs of Vermont farmers in a holistic way. Because crop insurance programs are not designed to serve the needs of smaller scale or more diversified, many Vermont farms are not covered. Then page 1, line 20, the state can establish a permanent funding support program to maintain viability of farms, continuously invest in farms and make them more resilient, and provide a source of relief funds permanently available when impacted by climate emergencies and extreme weather. Then you come to page 2, line 8, section 2. This is adding a subchapter to an existing chapter on promotion, marketing of Vermont and food products. Now it's going to be about the promotion, marketing, and support of Vermont farms, foods, and products. It's going to be called the Farm Security Special Fund subchapter. You'll get those definitions of what are all the eligible weather conditions, and they're pretty intuitive: winds, moisture, precipitation, heat, freeze, fire, hail, drought, or any other severe weather or growing condition impacting ag income as determined by the review board. Farm is the definition of farm is drawn from, in large part, from the RAPs. It's a parcel of land owned, leased, or managed by a person devoted primarily to the Farm Security Special Fund Review Board is defined or created in 3634. Farming is the traditional definition of farming under the RAPs. Then you get the creation of a special fund created at the agency. It's administered by the agency, consistency with the special fund requirements in Title 32. It consists of the funds appropriated by the General Assembly and each funds acquired through private or public other sources, funds from federal government aid. And then there's a directive, which you may or may not need. It's helpful, and you've been doing this more, but there's a requirement that the agency shall ensure language accessibility of the fund for procurement. There's already a requirement under the grant administrative bulletin that all grant programs be language accessible, but this is just a clear directive to the secretary. And then all balances in the fund are carried forward as being part of the fund. That is actually kind of important because otherwise at the end of each year, special fund balances revert to the general fund.
Be a sweep.
Right. So you want to make sure that this money stays in the fund for future use. Then on page 4, line 8, there's that fund that's the grant.
Can I
Yep.
ask a question? So we're saying the 7.5. If it exceeds that, because there may be some donations, then that entire amount will go for, not just the 7.5. Is that
Right. So this is the 7.5 is just your FY26 appropriation. The fund will be able to, you gave them the authority to go out and acquire more money. And if they do, that money stays in the fund for future use or for use in FY26. But if you get, say you get $5 million from private or public donations or federal funds, you're probably not going to spend $12 million in FY26 unless there's a really significant climate-based event.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that all of that money that's paying rolls over to the,
Yes.
that's not just the 7.5, but if
Anything that's unexpended that's in there at the end of the year rolls over.
Okay.
The one thing that I didn't roll over because the Department of Finance hates it is the interest
I
on
was
it.
just gonna ask that question.
They hate that. Yeah, because they have to go in and they have to calculate right. And depending on how much money is moving in and out of the fund at any particular time.
And I can tell you in trust accounts and all that stuff, and I deal with a lot of trust accounts and all that, that's just standard practice. They sweep that out of there.
So that'll just go into the general fund.
Yeah, well.
It's according to the special fund requirements, it just goes into the general fund. You should be aware that there are powers that be that don't like special funds and will try to convince you not to use a special fund. I am one of the biggest voices in support of special funds because the Agency of Agriculture is largely supported with special funds. They play a large part in how the Agency of Ag works, and they're very important to the Agency of Natural Resources too. But they are administratively difficult to deal with, and they they put limits on the money. When money's in the general fund, it can be used for whatever general fund purpose you want. When it's in a special fund, it's supposed to be used for that purpose. So especially when it's carrying forward from year to year, people look at that like JFO or people in finance and administration. They're like, well, we could have used that money this year.
But that takes away from being
Yeah.
a special fund.
So be prepared for pushback on a special fund. I am a fan, but other people aren't.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Page 4, line 8, this is where you get the grants. The secretary, after consultation with the review board, awards the grants from the fund that to farms that have incurred those financial losses due to eligible weather conditions. The grants shall be an amount that reimburses the farm for up to 50% of uninsured or otherwise uncovered losses due to those weather conditions, up to a maximum of $150,000 total per year. There's going to be criteria for the amount of an award based on the annual net income of the farm in relation to the median net income of all farms. So a farm that did well, even despite losses, might have a modifier that reduces any potential award. Then page 4, line 19, the secretary may verify the occurrence of eligible weather conditions through the use of data available from NOAA or any other federal or state certified weather data sources. The types of losses that are reimbursable: wages, compensation, lost income, debt payments, cost of replanting, livestock feed replacement, infrastructure, equipment repair of farm roads and roads necessary to access farms. Other losses is determined by the secretary after consultation with the review board. And then the secretary shall develop a streamlined application for awards under this section that shall include brief description of the damage, the attestation of the eligible weather condition or event, an estimate of losses, a year-end report of your income from Schedule F to 1040. This is how you report farm income. Application for award may be made at any time.
Can I stop you there just for a second? In the application, do we specify photos? So that, it says adaptation. Now, what is that, just a written statement? Or do we want to get, that could just be a written statement rather than photos, correct? Or will that be determined in the application process?
I think you're giving the secretary some discretion to direct how they do attestation. It's normally going to be a sworn statement. The pictures, I think, could be helpful for some, but for example, the freeze from 2 years ago, I mean, it came and went in like a day.
Yeah, but they took a photo of the trees and how there was a bud there yesterday and there's nothing there today. But it's just a question.
Yeah.
I'll leave it up to the secretary when I do the application process.
I was thinking about that as well, when you're hearing about photographs and the description of the damage.
It does help.
Yeah, I would imagine that they would always have photos, and that when there weren't photos, that there'd be a big question about it, but that's what I thought.
Thank you.
So page 6, line 1 through 7, these are kind of the mechanics of how the applications are going to be reviewed and awarded. The applications may be made at any time. The fund may only close the application once all the funds are awarded. Applications are awarded in the order received, but it has to be an administratively complete application. We can't try to sneak in first in line by putting in a incomplete application. All applications are reviewed by the review board within 10 days following receipt. board.
We talked a lot about that and we're gonna stay with that language.
Okay.
Because even and I heard the secretary tenants but I think we're just gonna stick with that.
Did we want to put business day? If it, is that implied when you say 10 days, is that just 10 calendar days or should we put in business days?
No, you actually, a couple of years ago, went to a day is a day. So you don't have to calculate holiday or Sunday, because there were different standards. Sometimes when you said a day, if you would say the birthdays, but sometimes you would say a day, it's like not including Sundays or holidays. It got confusing, so they're moved to a point where a day is a day.
So what do you think, 15 days, if you guys want to give them the 2 weeks time, or we can.
I think that would be more fair.
Well, it does give the secretary something back that he said something about. So,
If not. And while we're on this, the language administratively leaked application, is that standard?
It is standard. And basically there is a definition in Title VI.
Oh,
What that is, but it's really for the water quality program. But the concept is you have to provide all the information necessary for the agency to process your application. Like, for example, if you didn't submit your Schedule F, they can't process your application.
This question's for the NOFO. Do they usually, like during this last incident when they did the funding, does NOFO help the farmers fill out the application? Because I've done applications before and boy, sometimes you just don't, the language in that will confuse a layman. Whereas if an outfit like NOFO and that, do they have people that help navigate through the application?
For the record, Amy Schollenberger, my understanding is that they were, for their private fund that they were administering, they were trying to help farmers get as much money as they could as soon as possible, right? So yes, they were providing technical assistance. They may also be able to do that for this fund. It just depends on how the agency decides to work, but I will give a shout out to the Agency of Agriculture. I have, interacted a fair bit with the Working Lands Program and the staff that work with farmers on the grants program are amazing. They also have technical assistance from other organizations like the Sustainable Jobs Fund to help the farmers really do the best they can. And they get a lot of feedback on their applications if they don't get the grant so that they can potentially come back in a future year. I know it's they don't want to come back on this one, but I think the agency really works hard to get farmers the help they need for this kind of thing.
The agency learned a lesson during COVID for the dairy assistance application, which was resoundingly popular. And they've kind of moved away from kind of the way that they did that to make it more easier, accessible. Farmers were just giving up on that, walking away tens of thousands of dollars because of the application. Just too much.
We were hearing that time and time again, the application process, they should be sure in mind. And so, hopefully that will be the case.
Yeah.
So, if the review board recommends an award, the secretary shall issue the award within 2 weeks following the date of the review board's recommendation. Do you want to go for consistency, 15 days? So 2 weeks, 15 days,
Whatever you say.
for consistency. And then on the review board, it's created and attached to the agency. It consists of the secretary who serves as chair or his or her designee, the state chief recovery officer or designee, representatives and you're changing this to 3 ag organizations that can demonstrate and the center more. I'll include that language. 2 farmers who have received relief funding appointed by the secretary. They're all going to serve 2 initial 2-year terms, but there's going to be staggering. And then the powers, they review applications for assistance, assess the accuracy of whether the applications are recommend to the secretary who should receive assistance, or to ensure the fund is meeting the needs. The board shall review the application process, eligibility criteria, and second member report to you, General Assembly with recommendations. You're also adding NOFA's language about total documented farm losses being reported. The board elects its officers and may establish subcommittees. I just want to caution, when you don't have a lot of people on a board and you create subcommittees, each subcommittee becomes its own public agency.
Right.
And then anytime they talk with each other, it creates open meeting issues. And so I'm just saying that out loud so maybe somebody hears that.
So should we strike subcommittees
Well,
or committees and get rid of subcommittees?
even if you take away their authority to create subcommittees, they impliedly have the ability to set subcommittees. We deal with this at the legislature all the time. You think you're being efficient when you create 3-person committees,
Thank you.
but then they can't talk to each other, right, without going to an open meeting. I think the perfect number is 7. But this is a doable number.
Well, it's 5, right?
There's 5. And it just probably shouldn't create that many subjects. If they're private, actually, there is a change, page 8, line 11. It should say, it previously said 1 VSA chapter 1. Reading through the bill this morning, I was like, no, that just needs to be chapter 5.
Subject.
And then compensation, the private entities get their expenses per diem. And then section 3 is the appropriation of 7.5. In addition to anything else in the agency's budget for FY26, from the general fund, and it is for the purpose of farm security.
We're good?
Just to repeat, the requested markups, page 1, you're striking are not equitably distributed to small and medium scale farmers. You are adding the report language recommended by NOFA. And you are changing 10 days to 15 days and 2 weeks to 15 days. And you are changing the representatives on the 3 organizations.
That doable, sir?
Definitely.
Thank you.
All right, I am scheduled in another committee right now. I think I'm gonna decide to go.
Michael, can
When-
you send me a clean copy?
When will we make see that copy?
It depends on what my afternoon looks like, because I'm being told I might be scheduled, I might not. If I'm not, then I'll be able to get this turned around into you probably before you meet, because you're all likely meeting this afternoon, correct?
Yeah, but yeah, we can meet in the committee to vote it out this afternoon someplace. I'd like to vote it out today. So yeah, we can meet before we leave this building. And then by leaving.
I'll just do it at lunch.
Thank you. Well, me,
Yeah,
please, as well. Yeah.
Can they go ahead
Wow,
and,
because we-
can they go ahead and vote it at state?
Yeah, you can do that. You can move to vote it, subject to the markups that you just
Okay, I didn't know that. So that we'll do that then. Everybody good with that?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll do that. Okay. Thank you very much, sir.
I got a job.
Yeah,
And this goes up to John.
they're gonna need a clean copy of the bill. Joe will be bringing that,
Get the thing covered.
but they need a clean copy.
Yep.
And then,
Once he gets that,
yeah,
Yeah.
so just go around, I'm last, and so, yeah, just call the roll whenever you're ready.
all right. So,
And just online, just tell them what we're voting out.
so Senator Heffernan here, we are getting ready to vote out, S60. And what did he just say?
Amended or?
As amended,
Yeah, my guess would be if you put draft number 1.2,
draft number
would probably be safe.
Okay. 1.2. All right, are we ready for a vote?
Yes.
Senator Callahan,
Yeah,
Senator Heffernan, yes. Senator Majors,
Yes.
Senator Plunkett,
Yes.
Senator Ingalls.
Yes.
The vote is 5 yeses, 0 no's, and no abstentions.
Well, cool. I want to thank Senator Major, all of us, but Senator Major for leading the charge on that. He did a good job. And I think we got a good bill. And I think we did a good job. I don't think we're gonna have much resistance on this. So good job, everyone. And Senator Major's gonna report it. And you'll and he's gonna get some tutelage from Senator Collmore,
yeah.
which will go well. And yeah, you got any questions, you all over with that? You just have to wait for a clean copy.
Yeah,
before
I'm
you
gonna
make-
say, will the counselor send it by email or?
He'll send it to you by email before this, by this afternoon, he said.
Okay.
And once you get that, you'll take that and you'll take,
But we'll need a clean copy of it, won't we, Linda? How will we?
yeah,
work
that's
that
what
out?
he will send. Mike will send you the clean copy
Right,
and you have to take it with this
okay.
and put a sticker on it that says what the vote was on the clean copy.
And we also made amendments, so there's probably something on that sheet that you're having your right hand.
As amended, I think, Linda's
Yeah,
kind of circle.
Yes, favorable with amendment.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, good, but thank you for that, Brian.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think, unless there's any more, I want to just, say, you guys all have a good week off. And, appreciate all the hard work. We're learning a lot. I mean, even when we just have people in, we just learn a lot. So we're doing a really good job. We're very proud of what everybody's doing. Everybody works hard. Everybody takes it serious, and that's all you can ask for. I think it's a very, very, very fortunate to have the committee that I have. I appreciate it very, very much.